My name is Hazel Martinez, and I'm 27 years old. I was sitting in my Denver apartment, scrolling through my phone on what should have been the happiest day for our family, when I saw the text that shattered my world. Please don't come to the wedding tomorrow. The family wants a drama-free celebration. We think it's best if you stay home. The message was from Mom. But what broke my heart completely was seeing that little thumbs-up reaction underneath. My sister Brooke had liked it. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If this story resonates with you or you've experienced family drama like this, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next because this wedding day revelation changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Growing up as the middle child between my picture-perfect sister Brooke and my golden boy brother Tyler was like living in a house where I was constantly auditioning for a role I'd never get. Brooke was 2 years older, the type of daughter every parent dreams of. She got straight A's without trying, never missed curfew, and had this magical ability to make everyone around her feel special. Tyler, 3 years younger than me, was the athlete, the charmer, the one who could talk his way out of any trouble with that crooked smile that made adults melt. Then there was me. The one who asked too many questions. The one who pointed out when things didn't make sense. The one who somehow always ended up being blamed when family gatherings went sideways. Mom would always say I was dramatic or too sensitive, and over the years, I started believing maybe she was right. Maybe I was the problem. The pattern started early. When I was 12 and Brooke was 14, she broke Mom's favorite vase while practicing cheerleading routines in the living room. But when Mom came home and found the pieces, Brooke tearfully explained that I had been acting crazy and knocked it over during one of my episodes. I tried to defend myself, but my protests only made me look more guilty. That night, I was grounded for 2 weeks while Brooke got sympathy for having to deal with her difficult sister. As we grew older, I threw myself into my work. I studied graphic design in college, landed a great job at a creative agency in Denver, and built a successful career creating brand identities for small businesses. I was proud of what I'd accomplished, but whenever I shared my successes with the family, the response was always lukewarm. "That's nice, honey," Mom would say, before immediately changing the subject to Brooke's latest promotion at the law firm or Tyler's weekend golf tournament. When Brooke announced her engagement to her longtime boyfriend Derek 6 months ago, I was genuinely excited. I loved Derek. He was kind, funny, and he seemed to really see Brooke for who she was beyond the perfect exterior. I called Brooke the night she told us, practically bouncing with enthusiasm as I offered to help with whatever she needed. Wedding planning was right in my wheelhouse. I could design invitations, help coordinate vendors, maybe even create a beautiful website for their big day. "Oh, that's sweet," Brooke had said, her voice strangely flat. "But Mom and I have already started making plans. We've got it handled." I tried not to feel hurt. Of course they'd want to handle the major decisions themselves. But as weeks passed, I started noticing things. Family dinners where the conversation would suddenly stop when I walked into the room. Whispered phone calls that ended abruptly when I appeared. Mom would mention wedding errands but never invited me along. The first real slap in the face came when I saw Aunt Beverly's Facebook post showing a beautiful brunch spread with the caption, "So blessed to celebrate Brooke's upcoming wedding with the family." There was Mom, Brooke, Tyler's girlfriend Ashley, and several cousins I hadn't seen in months, all gathered around a table covered in wedding magazines and fabric samples. I wasn't just not invited. I didn't even know it was happening. When I called Mom that evening, my voice carefully controlled, she acted like it was no big deal. "Oh, honey, it was just a small thing. Very last minute. We didn't want to bother you since you're always so busy with work." But the photo showed elaborate place settings and what was clearly a planned event. I could see wedding favor samples scattered across the table and a Pinterest board printed out and mounted on an easel. That's when I started paying closer attention. I noticed that our family group text, which used to include everyone, had gone strangely quiet. But Tyler would make references to things I knew nothing about. Like we talked about on Sunday, he'd say during our monthly family dinner. Remember what Mom said about the venue? I'd look around the table, confused, and Mom would wave it off. Just wedding stuff, sweetie. Nothing important. I discovered through my cousin Emma's Instagram story that there had been not one but 3 family wedding planning sessions that I knew nothing about. Extended family members were flying in from other states for these gatherings. Hotel blocks had been reserved. A bachelor party was being planned for Derek. And somehow, through it all, I was the only family member who remained completely in the dark. The breaking point came when I realized my +1 invitation had never been sent. I'd been dating Nathan for 8 months. He was a software engineer, thoughtful and stable, everything my family claimed to want for me. But when I asked Brooke about bringing him to the wedding, she looked confused. "I thought you were coming alone," she said. "The seating chart is already finalized." That night, I sat in my apartment and tried to piece together when I had become the outsider in my own family. Nathan held me while I cried, his anger on my behalf making me feel less crazy. "This isn't normal, Hazel," he said quietly. "Families don't just exclude people like this. Something else is going on." Determined to fix whatever was broken, I decided to reach out to Brooke directly. I drove to her apartment on a Saturday morning with coffee and pastries from her favorite bakery, hoping we could have an honest conversation about why I felt so left out of her wedding planning. Brooke answered the door in her pajamas, looking annoyed to see me. "Hazel? What are you doing here? I have a dress fitting in an hour." "I brought coffee," I said, holding up the bag. "I was hoping we could talk. Just the 2 of us. Sister to sister." She reluctantly let me in, but her body language was closed off. She sat across from me at her kitchen table, arms crossed, barely touching the latte I'd bought her. When I tried to explain how excluded I felt, how much I wanted to be part of her special day, her response cut deeper than anything Mom had ever said. "You always make everything about yourself, Hazel. This is my wedding. My day. I can't handle your drama right now. Every family event turns into the Hazel show where you're upset about something. I just want one day that's about me and Derek." I stared at her, stunned. "When have I ever made your events about me? I'm asking to be included, not to take over. Last Christmas, you started that huge argument about politics. Tyler's birthday party, you got upset because we didn't sing happy birthday the way you thought we should. Mom's birthday dinner, you criticized the restaurant choice. Do you see the pattern here?" I tried to remember these incidents the way she was describing them. At Christmas, I had expressed concern about Uncle Charles's racist joke about immigrants. At Tyler's party, I had suggested we wait for our cousin Jake to arrive before starting, since he was driving 3 hours to be there. At Mom's birthday, I had quietly mentioned to the server that Mom was allergic to shellfish when they recommended a dish with shrimp. Each time, I thought I was being helpful or standing up for what was right. But listening to Brooke's version, I sounded like a constant source of problems. "I don't remember it that way," I said weakly. "That's exactly what I mean," Brooke snapped. "You never think you do anything wrong. It's always someone else's fault." Mom is trying to protect my wedding day from becoming another situation where we're all walking on eggshells around your mood. I left her apartment feeling more confused than ever. Was I really the problem? Had I been so wrapped up in my own perspective that I couldn't see how my behavior was affecting everyone else? That's when I discovered the family group chat that didn't include me. I found out about it in the most humiliating way possible. During a family dinner, Tyler was showing everyone photos on his phone when a notification popped up. Martinez Family Wedding Planning was the chat name, and I could see multiple unread messages before he quickly switched away from the screen. "What was that?" I asked, my heart sinking. "What was what?" Tyler said, but his face had gone red. "That group chat. Martinez Family Wedding Planning." The table went silent. Mom and Brooke exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Dad suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. It's just for coordinating rides and stuff, Tyler mumbled. Nothing important. But I had seen enough of the preview to know that wasn't true. There were messages about rehearsal dinner locations, flower arrangements, and what looked like a detailed timeline for the wedding day. My own family had created an entire communication system that specifically excluded me. When I confronted Mom about it later, her response was a masterclass in gaslighting. "Oh honey, we didn't want to overwhelm you with all the little details. You're so busy with your career. We thought you'd appreciate not being bothered with every tiny decision." "But I want to be bothered," I said, my voice breaking. "I want to help. I want to be part of this." "You are part of it," she said soothingly. "You're going to be a bridesmaid. You'll be right there with Brooke on her special day." But even that felt hollow. I had never been asked to be a bridesmaid. It had just been assumed, mentioned in passing like an afterthought. I didn't know what dress I was supposed to wear, when the fittings were scheduled, or even who else was in the wedding party. Everything about my role seemed to be decided without my input. The situation got worse when my cousin Emma accidentally revealed how deep the exclusion went. She was visiting from Portland and staying with Aunt Beverly. When she saw me at the grocery store, she lit up with excitement. "Hazel! I'm so glad I ran into you. I wanted to thank you for not making a big deal about the bridal shower. Beverly told me how gracious you were about the family-only decision." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What bridal shower?" Emma's face went white. "Oh God. Oh no. I thought you knew. I thought that's why you weren't there." "Beverly said that you understood it was just for the older generation and married cousins." There had been a bridal shower. A family bridal shower that I knew nothing about. While I was spending my Saturday working on client projects, thinking my family was busy with their own lives, they were celebrating Brooke without me. "When was this?" I managed to ask. "Last weekend. At Beverly's house." "Hazel, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you didn't know. I would never have brought it up if I thought." I spent the rest of that grocery store conversation trying to convince Emma that everything was fine, that there must have been some miscommunication. But inside, I was crumbling. This wasn't accidental exclusion anymore. This was deliberate. When I tried to talk to Dad about it, hoping he might be the voice of reason, his response was disappointing but not surprising. Dad had always been the peacekeeper, the one who avoided conflict at all costs. "Maybe you should apologize to your mother," he said without even asking what had happened. "You know how she gets when there's tension in the family. Just smooth things over so we can all enjoy the wedding." But what was I supposed to apologize for? For wanting to be included? For noticing that I was being systematically cut out of my sister's wedding? For existing? The final insult came when I learned that the family had been telling people outside our immediate circle that I was going through a difficult phase. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who had watched us grow up, mentioned it when I ran into her at the post office. "Your mother told me you're having a hard time right now, dear," she said with genuine concern. "I hope you're getting the help you need. These young adult years can be so challenging." I wanted to ask what exactly Mom had told her, but I was too humiliated to dig deeper. The implication was clear: my family was painting me as unstable, troubled, someone who couldn't handle normal family functions. They were creating a narrative that justified my exclusion while making themselves look like the understanding, patient relatives dealing with a problematic family member. By the time Nathan witnessed one of these family interactions firsthand, I was starting to question my own sanity. We had gone to Tyler's girlfriend Ashley's birthday party, which was being held at Mom and Dad's house. Throughout the evening, I noticed the same pattern. Conversations would halt when I approached. People would speak in code about next weekend or the plan we discussed. When I tried to contribute to conversations about wedding-related topics, my suggestions were politely dismissed or ignored entirely. Nathan watched it all with increasing frustration. On the drive home, he was quiet for a long time before finally speaking. "Hazel, I need you to know that what I saw tonight wasn't normal. The way they interact with you, it's like they've decided you're not really part of the family anymore. And the crazy part is, you're the most thoughtful, considerate person in that room. You remembered Ashley's favorite wine, you helped clean up without being asked, you tried to include everyone in conversations. But they treated you like you were some kind of burden. His validation meant everything to me, but it also made the situation more painful. If Nathan could see it, if it was obvious to an outsider, then I wasn't imagining things. My family really had decided I was expendable. With only 2 weeks left before the wedding, I decided to make one final attempt at reconciliation. I couldn't bear the thought of my sister getting married with this wall of misunderstanding between us. I spent hours crafting the perfect peace offering, a custom wedding gift that showcased my professional skills while demonstrating how much I cared about Brooke and Derek's new life together. I designed and had printed a beautiful coffee table book documenting their relationship from their first date through the proposal. I had secretly gathered photos from their social media, interviewed their friends about favorite memories, and created a timeline of their love story with elegant typography and layout design. It was the kind of personal, meaningful gift that takes weeks to create and costs several $100s to produce professionally. More than that, it was proof of how much attention I had been paying to my sister's happiness, even while feeling excluded from it. I also wrote a heartfelt letter apologizing for any ways I might have inadvertently caused stress during the wedding planning process. I acknowledged that I sometimes had strong opinions and that maybe I hadn't always expressed them in the most helpful way. I told Brooke how proud I was of the woman she had become and how happy I was that she had found someone who loved her the way Derek did. I asked for the chance to start fresh and be the sister she needed during this important time in her life. Armed with my gift and letter, I drove to my parents' house on a Thursday evening, hoping to catch Mom in a good mood. I had called ahead to make sure everyone would be home, presenting it as a family dinner where I could properly give Brooke her wedding gift. The moment I walked through the front door, I could feel the tension in the air. Mom's smile was brittle and forced. Dad looked uncomfortable. Tyler mumbled hello without looking up from his phone. But I pressed forward, determined to make this work. I wanted to give you this before all the wedding craziness gets too intense, I said to Brooke, presenting the beautifully wrapped book and letter. I put a lot of thought into it. Brooke unwrapped it slowly, her expression unreadable. When she saw the cover, with its elegant script reading the love story of Brooke and Derek and a beautiful photo from their engagement shoot that I had enhanced and restored, her eyes widened. She flipped through the pages, and I watched her face soften as she saw the care and attention I had put into every detail. Hazel, this is... She started, and for a moment, I thought we might be turning a corner. But then Mom interrupted, her voice sharp with disapproval. That's very nice, dear, but it's a little too late for grand gestures, don't you think? The words hung in the air like a slap. I turned to look at Mom, confusion and hurt warring in my chest. Too late? I don't understand. I thought you'd appreciate that I wanted to contribute something meaningful. Where was this thoughtfulness 6 months ago when we were actually planning the wedding? Mom continued, her tone growing colder. Where was this consideration when Brooke was stressed about venues and vendors and needed her family's support? But I offered to help, I said, my voice getting smaller. I asked to be involved. You told me you had everything handled. We told you that because every time we tried to include you, you had problems with our choices, Mom shot back. You criticized the venue for not being eco-friendly enough. You questioned whether Derek's family would feel comfortable with our traditions. You made it clear that you thought we were doing everything wrong. I tried to remember these conversations, but my memories didn't match her description. I had suggested a few eco-friendly alternatives when asked for my opinion. I had wondered aloud whether Derek's very traditional Catholic family would enjoy our family's tendency toward loud, enthusiastic celebrations. These hadn't felt like criticisms at the time, but rather the kind of considerations any thoughtful family member might raise. I was just trying to help make sure everyone felt included, I said weakly. By questioning every decision we made? Brooke finally spoke up, but her tone was defensive rather than appreciative. By making us second-guess choices we were happy with? Mom's right, Hazel. You've been nothing but negative about this wedding from the beginning. I felt like I was in some kind of alternate reality where caring was criticism and thoughtfulness was negativity. Nathan's words from our previous conversations echoed in my mind. They've rewritten the story to make you the villain. At that moment, as if summoned by some cosmic sense of timing, Uncle Charles and Aunt Beverly arrived for what I learned was a planned family meeting about final wedding arrangements. They walked into the living room to find me standing there holding the remnants of my gift wrapping, tears starting to form in my eyes. "Oh," Aunt Beverly said, clearly uncomfortable. "We didn't realize Hazel would be here." The statement landed like a bomb in the room. Even Tyler looked up from his phone, sensing that something significant had just been revealed. Uncle Charles shot Beverly a warning look, but the damage was done. "What do you mean you didn't realize I'd be here?" I asked. "This is my family too. This is about my sister's wedding." The adults in the room exchanged glances that communicated volumes. Finally, Mom stood up, her mask of politeness finally slipping completely. "Hazel, I think it would be best if you left now. We have important details to finalize, and we need to focus without distractions." "Distractions?" I repeated, the word feeling like a physical blow. "I'm a distraction?" "You're upset, and when you're upset, you make it difficult for anyone else to think clearly," Mom said with the kind of calm certainty that made me question whether I was losing my mind. "This is exactly what we're trying to avoid." I looked around the room at my family, searching for someone who would stand up for me, someone who would acknowledge how wrong this felt. Dad was staring at his hands. Tyler had retreated back to his phone. Uncle Charles was studying the family photos on the mantel as if he'd never seen them before. Aunt Beverly was whispering something to Mom that I couldn't hear. Only Brooke was looking at me, and what I saw in her eyes was worse than anger or frustration. It was pity. She felt sorry for me, but not because of how the family was treating me. She felt sorry for me because she believed I was exactly what they said I was: dramatic, difficult, incapable of being part of normal family functions without causing problems. "I just wanted to give you a nice wedding gift," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And it's lovely," Brooke said in the tone you'd use with a child who had drawn you a picture with crayons. "Really thoughtful." "Thank you." But she was already setting it aside, turning back to the wedding planning materials spread across the coffee table. The dismissal was complete. I gathered my purse and the letter I hadn't been able to give her, walking toward the door in a kind of shocked silence. Behind me, I could hear the family meeting resuming as if my emotional breakdown was just a minor interruption to be managed and moved past. In my car outside their house, I called Nathan with shaking hands. When he answered and heard me crying, he immediately asked where I was. "I'll be right there," he said. "Don't drive yet. Just wait for me." When he arrived and slid into the passenger seat, taking one look at my devastated face, his own expression hardened with protective anger. "What did they do?" he asked quietly. I told him everything, including Mom's declaration that I was too late and a distraction. I described the way they had been planning around me rather than with me, the way my gift was accepted with polite dismissal rather than genuine appreciation. "Nathan," I said when I had finished recounting the evening, "what if they're right? What if I really am the problem?" He was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. "Hazel, I've watched you with my family. I've seen you at work events, with friends, with strangers. You're kind, thoughtful, and incredibly good at making people feel comfortable and included. The person they're describing isn't the person I know. The person they're describing doesn't exist. But why would they all see me that way if it wasn't true?" "Because," Nathan said gently, "sometimes families create stories to justify behavior they know is wrong. It's easier to believe you're difficult than to admit they've been cruel." That night, Nathan suggested we go away for the wedding weekend. "Let's drive up to the mountains. Get a cabin. Disconnect from all of this for a few days. You don't deserve to sit at home feeling terrible while they celebrate without you. For the first time in weeks, the idea of not being at Brooke's wedding felt like relief rather than punishment. Maybe Nathan was right. Maybe the best thing I could do was to step away from the toxicity and focus on the relationships that actually valued me. Nathan and I were hiking a trail near Breckenridge when my phone rang on Saturday afternoon. The caller ID showed Mrs. Dorothy Chen, our 78-year-old neighbor who had lived next door to my parents for over 20 years. Mrs. Chen was the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday, brought soup when you were sick, and somehow always knew exactly what was happening in the neighborhood without being nosy about it. I almost didn't answer. I was trying to disconnect from everything related to my family for the weekend. But Mrs. Chen never called unless something was important. "Hello, Mrs. Chen," I said, stepping off the trail to take the call. "Oh, Hazel dear, I'm so glad I reached you," her warm voice came through the phone. "I've been thinking about you all day. How are you holding up?" "I'm doing okay," I said, confused. "Is everything all right?" "Well, I wanted to check on you since you're missing Brooke's wedding today. I know how close you girls have always been. It must be so hard to be sick on such an important day." I felt the world tilt sideways. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your mother told me you came down with a terrible flu this week." "Food poisoning, was it?" "She said you were just devastated to miss the ceremony, but you didn't want to risk getting anyone else sick." "I thought it was so considerate of you, even though it must be breaking your heart." Nathan saw my face change and moved closer, his expression concerned. I put the phone on speaker so he could hear. "Mrs. Chen," I said carefully, "I'm not sick. I wasn't invited to the wedding." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Mrs. Chen spoke again, her voice was different, sharper with confusion and what might have been anger. "What do you mean you weren't invited?" "Hazel, you're her sister. Mom sent me a text yesterday telling me not to come. She said the family wanted a drama-free wedding and thought it would be best if I stayed home." "That can't be right," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "There must be some misunderstanding. Just last week, your mother was telling me how worried she was about you being able to handle the emotional stress of the day. She said you'd been having such a difficult time lately, and she was concerned that the wedding might trigger one of your episodes." "My episodes?" I repeated, feeling sick to my stomach. "What episodes?" Nathan was recording the conversation on his phone, having learned to document everything when it came to my family's gaslighting. "Oh dear," Mrs. Chen said, and I could hear the realization dawning in her voice. "Hazel, what exactly has your mother been telling people?" Over the next 20 minutes, Mrs. Chen revealed the elaborate web of lies my mother had been spinning throughout the neighborhood and extended family. According to Mom's version of events, I had been struggling with mental health issues for months. I was supposedly jealous of Brooke's success and had made several concerning statements about ruining the wedding. Mom had painted herself as the long-suffering mother trying to protect one daughter's special day from the other daughter's instability. "She said you'd threatened to object during the ceremony," Mrs. Chen continued, sounding more upset with each revelation. "She claimed you'd been sending Brooke disturbing messages about how marriage was a trap and Derek wasn't good enough for her. Linda said the whole family was walking on eggshells, never knowing when you might have another breakdown." I was sitting on a rock by this point, my legs too shaky to keep standing. None of this was true. I had never threatened to object to anything. I had never sent Brooke disturbing messages about her relationship. The few times I had expressed any concerns about Derek, it had been minor things like hoping he understood how important family traditions were to Brooke, or wondering if his demanding work schedule would affect their plans to start a family soon. "Mrs. Chen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "have you ever seen me act the way my mother described? In all the years you've known me, have I ever seemed unstable or threatening?" "Never," she said without hesitation. "You've always been the most level-headed of Linda's children. Even as a teenager, you were mature and thoughtful. That's why I was so concerned when she started telling these stories. It didn't match the young woman I know. After hanging up with Mrs. Chen, Nathan and I sat in stunned silence on the mountainside. The scope of Mom's deception was breathtaking. She hadn't just excluded me from the wedding, she had systematically destroyed my reputation to justify that exclusion. "We need to document all of this," Nathan said finally. "Every conversation, every lie she's told. Because this isn't just about the wedding anymore. She's been character assassinating you for months, maybe longer." I started making a list of everyone Mrs. Chen had mentioned hearing these stories from. Our pastor, several neighbors, family friends, extended relatives. Mom had been methodically spreading lies about my mental state and behavior to anyone who might question why I wasn't involved in wedding planning or why I wouldn't be at the ceremony. Nathan encouraged me to start reaching out to these people directly. "Don't accuse your mom of lying," he advised. "Just express confusion about the stories and ask what they've heard. Let them tell you what she said." My first call was to my cousin Jake, who lived in Phoenix and had always been one of my closest family relationships. When I reached him, his voice was cautious in a way that immediately set off alarm bells. "Hey Jake, it's Hazel. I wanted to call and clarify some things about why I'm not at Brooke's wedding today." "Oh," Jake said, and I could hear him choosing his words carefully. "How are you feeling? Your mom said you've been having a really rough time lately." "What exactly did she tell you?" There was a pause. "Hazel, maybe this conversation would be better to have when you're feeling more stable. I don't want to say anything that might upset you." "Jake, I need you to tell me what my mother told you about me." Reluctantly, Jake revealed that Mom had called him 3 weeks ago to explain why I wouldn't be at the wedding. According to her story, I had been struggling with severe depression and anxiety following a recent breakup. The breakup was news to me, since Nathan and I were very much together. Mom had told Jake that I was in therapy for anger management issues and that my therapist had advised against attending stressful family events. "She said you'd been saying some concerning things about Brooke and Derek's relationship," Jake continued. "Like you didn't think Derek was financially stable enough for Brooke and you were worried she was making a mistake. Linda was afraid you might say something inappropriate at the ceremony." Every piece of this narrative was either completely fabricated or a twisted version of normal, caring concerns. I had once mentioned to Mom that Derek's startup company seemed risky and I hoped he had a backup plan if it didn't work out. I had said this in the context of hoping Brooke felt secure in their financial planning, not because I thought Derek was inadequate. "Jake," I said, "I want you to know that none of that is true. I'm not depressed, I'm still with Nathan, I'm not in anger management therapy, and I've never said anything inappropriate about Derek. Mom told me not to come to the wedding because she said the family wanted it to be drama-free." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a long time. Finally, Jake spoke, his voice uncertain. "But why would Linda make all that up? That's what I'm trying to figure out." After talking to Jake, I called my grandmother Rose, Mom's own mother, who was supposed to be at the wedding. When I explained that I wasn't there because I hadn't been invited, her reaction was immediate and fierce. "What do you mean you weren't invited? I specifically asked Linda if you were bringing that nice young man of yours to the reception. She told me you'd decided not to come because you weren't ready for big family gatherings yet." Grandma Rose, what did she mean by not ready for big family gatherings? My grandmother's voice became tight with what I recognized as barely controlled anger. "She said you'd been having panic attacks in social situations and your doctor recommended avoiding stressful events until your medication was adjusted properly." I wasn't on any medication. I hadn't had a panic attack since college, and that was situational stress related to finals week. The lies were becoming more elaborate and more damaging with each person I talked to. But the most shocking revelation came from my grandmother's next statement. "Hazel, honey, I've been trying to reach you for months. I've sent letters and birthday cards, but you never respond. Your mother said you'd asked for some space from the family while you work through your issues, but I've been so worried about you." "What letters? What birthday cards?" "Grandma, I never received anything from you. I sent a card for your birthday in September, a letter in October asking how you were doing, Halloween candy, and a Thanksgiving card. I've been writing to that apartment address your mother gave me. I felt a chill run down my spine. What address did she give you? When Grandma Rose read back the address, it was my old apartment from 2 years ago. I had moved to my current place 18 months ago and had specifically given my new address to Mom to share with family members. But she had been giving out my old address, ensuring that any letters or cards from family members who might be concerned about my absence would never reach me. Nathan, who had been listening to my grandmother's side of the conversation through the speaker, was taking notes furiously. The pattern was becoming clear. Mom hadn't just excluded me from the wedding. She had been systematically isolating me from the entire extended family by intercepting communications and spreading lies about my mental state. Grandma, I said, my voice shaking, I need you to know that I never asked for space from the family. I've been trying to be more involved, not less. And I'm not struggling with panic attacks or depression. I'm doing really well in my career and my relationship. I think Mom has been lying to everyone about why I'm not around. The silence that followed was loaded with implications. Finally, my grandmother spoke, her voice steely with determination. Hazel Marie Martinez, you listen to me very carefully. I have been your grandmother for 27 years, and I know you better than Linda seems to think I do. I want you to come to my house tomorrow morning. We're going to get to the bottom of this, and I'm going to make some phone calls that are long overdue. For the first time in months, I felt like someone in my family was truly on my side. The next morning, Nathan and I drove straight from the mountains to Grandmother Rose's house. She lived in a tidy ranch home about 30 minutes from my parents', surrounded by the kind of garden that made neighbors slow down when they drove past. When we arrived, she was waiting for us with a pot of coffee and a folder full of papers that she set on her kitchen table like evidence in a trial. Before we talk about what your mother has been doing, she said, I want you to see something. She opened the folder and pulled out copies of every letter, card, and note she had sent to my old address over the past year and a half. Birthday cards with checks that had never been cashed. A letter asking about my job that included newspaper clippings she thought I'd find interesting. A Halloween card with a gift certificate to my favorite bookstore. A Christmas card with photos from her trip to visit her sister in California. I kept copies of everything because I was starting to worry that something had happened to you, she explained. When I asked your mother why you never responded, she said you were going through a difficult phase and needed time to work through your problems without family pressure. But Hazel, this isn't like you. Even during your most stressed periods in college, you always called me back. I was holding the Christmas card, looking at pictures of Grandmother Rose smiling on a beach in San Diego, and I felt a profound sense of loss. She had been trying to share her life with me, trying to maintain our relationship, and I had no idea. Worse, I had probably seemed ungrateful and distant to her when I never acknowledged her efforts. Nathan was documenting everything with photos, creating a timeline of intercepted communications alongside the lies Mom had told different family members. The scope of the deception was staggering. Grandma, I said, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Have there been other family events or gatherings that I wasn't told about? She looked uncomfortable. Linda said you didn't want to be invited to things right now. She said big family gatherings were triggering for you. What things? Over the next hour, Grandmother Rose revealed a pattern of exclusion that went back over a year. Tyler's graduation party from his master's program. Uncle Charles's retirement celebration. A family reunion planning meeting for next summer. A memorial service for our great-aunt Helen. Even smaller gatherings, like Mom's book club friends meeting Brooke's future mother-in-law, or family dinners where wedding planning was discussed. Each time, Mom had an explanation for why I wasn't there. I was working too much and needed rest. I was going through relationship problems and didn't want to be around happy couples. I was having career stress and couldn't handle additional social obligations. The excuses were always plausible and always painted me as fragile in a way that made family members hesitant to reach out directly. What I don't understand, Grandmother Rose said, studying me carefully, is why Linda would do this. You seem perfectly fine to me. You're articulate, you're clearly doing well professionally based on what Nathan has told me about your work, and you seem very happy together. Where are these mental health problems she keeps talking about? They don't exist, I said simply. I think Mom has been creating a fiction to justify cutting me out of the family. Grandmother Rose was quiet for a long time, and I could see her processing years of interactions through this new lens. Finally, she stood up with the determined energy of someone who had made a decision. I'm calling Pastor Williams, she announced. Pastor Williams had been our family's minister for over 15 years. He had baptized both Brooke and me, officiated at several family weddings, and was supposed to perform Brooke's ceremony yesterday. If Mom had been spreading her lies to him, it would explain why he had seemed distant during the few recent encounters I'd had with him at church. Grandmother Rose put the call on speaker. When Pastor Williams answered, his voice was warm but immediately concerned when he learned I was there. Hazel, my dear, how are you feeling today? I've been praying for you during this difficult time. What difficult time? I asked, though I was beginning to expect the answer. Your mother asked me to pray for your troubled spirit, he said gently. She said you'd been struggling with jealousy and resentment toward your sister, and she was hoping that prayer and reflection might help you find peace before you did something you'd regret. Grandmother Rose's face went white with anger. Ray, she said, using Pastor Williams' first name, what exactly did Linda Martinez tell you about Hazel? Pastor Williams seemed surprised to hear Grandmother Rose's voice, and his tone became more cautious. She said Hazel had been making concerning statements about Brooke's wedding. Something about wanting to expose Derek's family secrets during the ceremony. Linda was very worried that Hazel might disrupt the service. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I had never made any statements about Derek's family, concerning or otherwise. I barely knew his family beyond pleasant small talk at a few gatherings. The idea that I would want to expose secrets at a wedding was so far from my character that anyone who actually knew me would have questioned it immediately. Pastor Williams, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, I have never said anything about wanting to disrupt Brooke's wedding or expose anyone's secrets. I love my sister and I want her to be happy. Have you ever known me to be vindictive or cruel? There was a long pause. No, he admitted. That's what made Linda's concerns so troubling. It seemed very out of character for you. But she was so upset, so convinced that you were planning something destructive. Nathan leaned forward. Sir, may I ask when this conversation took place? About 3 weeks ago. Linda came to my office quite distressed. She said she needed guidance on how to protect Brooke's wedding day without completely alienating Hazel. 3 weeks ago was right around the time I had given Brooke the custom photo book and tried to make peace with the family. Mom had been planning my exclusion while I was trying to repair our relationship. Grandmother Rose took control of the conversation. Ray, I need you to understand something very important. Hazel has been systematically excluded from this wedding and from family events for over a year. Linda has been telling different lies to different people to justify this exclusion. She's been intercepting Hazel's mail and spreading false stories about her mental health. What she told you about Hazel planning to disrupt the wedding is completely fabricated. Pastor Williams was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was troubled. If what you're saying is true, then I may have inadvertently contributed to a serious injustice. Linda asked me not to mention her concerns to Hazel directly, saying it might make the situation worse. I should have trusted my own judgment about Hazel's character. After hanging up with Pastor Williams, we called several more family members and family friends. Each conversation revealed new layers of Mom's deception. My Aunt Beverly, Uncle Charles's wife, admitted that she had been uncomfortable with how I was being treated but had been told by Mom that questioning the family's decisions would only make my condition worse. Linda said you were fragile right now and that pushing back against family boundaries might trigger a serious breakdown, Beverly explained. She made it sound like our job was to support Brooke and give you space to heal, even if that felt harsh. Beverly also revealed something that made my blood run cold. Hazel, I need to ask you something, and please don't take this the wrong way. Have you been getting professional help for your issues? What issues? I asked, though I was dreading the answer. Linda said you'd been seeing a therapist for anger management and family relationship problems. She said your therapist had recommended limited contact with family members until you learned better coping strategies. There was no therapist. There was no anger management. There were no coping strategies. Mom had invented an entire mental health narrative, complete with professional treatment recommendations, to justify my isolation. But perhaps the most devastating revelation came when Nathan suggested I call my sister directly to ask about my bridesmaid role. I was supposed to be in the wedding party, but I had never received any information about fittings, rehearsals, or even what dress I was supposed to wear. When Brooke answered her phone, she sounded exhausted from the wedding festivities and slightly annoyed to hear from me. Hazel, what do you want? I just got married yesterday, and I'm trying to enjoy my first day as a wife. I wanted to ask about being your bridesmaid, I said. I realized I never got any information about dress fittings or the rehearsal. There was a pause that stretched too long. Hazel, you weren't a bridesmaid. But Mom said I was going to be a bridesmaid. She mentioned it specifically when I asked about my role in the wedding. No, Brooke said slowly. Ashley was my maid of honor, and Derek's sisters were the bridesmaids. Mom never said anything about you being in the wedding party. Where did you get that idea? I felt the room spinning around me. Even my assumed role as bridesmaid had been a lie, something Mom had invented to make me think I still had a place in the wedding while actually having no intention of including me in anything. Brooke, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, can you please tell me exactly what Mom told you about why I wasn't at your wedding? She said you sent a text saying you couldn't handle being there. That you thought it would be too emotional and you didn't want to risk having a breakdown in front of everyone. I thought it was very mature of you to recognize your limits. I never sent that text, I said. I was told not to come because the family wanted a drama-free wedding. The silence on Brooke's end of the line was deafening. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and confused. But Mom showed me the text from you. She read it out loud to all of us. Mom had fabricated a text message from me to justify my absence to the family. She had made it sound like my choice, like my recognition of my own instability, rather than their decision to exclude me. Even my own sister believed I had chosen not to attend her wedding. Nathan was writing down everything, creating a comprehensive record of every lie, every manipulation, every intercepted communication. By the end of the day, we had documented a pattern of behavior that went far beyond simple family drama. This was systematic emotional abuse, designed to isolate me from my support system while making me question my own reality. That evening, Grandmother Rose made the phone call I had been hoping someone would make for months. She called Uncle Charles and demanded an immediate family meeting to address what she termed Linda's campaign of lies against Hazel. This ends now, she told him firmly. Either we deal with this as a family, or I start making very uncomfortable phone calls to everyone Linda has been manipulating. Including Brooke's new in-laws, who probably have some interesting opinions about the family dynamics they witnessed at the wedding. The family meeting was scheduled for the following Sunday. Finally, after more than a year of gaslighting and systematic exclusion, the truth was going to come out. Sunday arrived with the weight of a reckoning. Grandmother Rose had insisted the meeting take place at her house rather than my parents' home, saying she wanted neutral territory and no one to feel they could control the conversation by hosting. Uncle Charles and Aunt Beverly arrived first, followed by Tyler and his girlfriend Ashley. Dad came alone, explaining that Mom was feeling unwell and might not attend. I arrived with Nathan, carrying a folder of evidence that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Grandmother Rose had asked Nathan to be there as a witness, saying that having someone outside the family present would keep everyone more honest. We waited for 30 minutes before Mom finally showed up, looking like she was attending a funeral rather than a family meeting. She barely acknowledged me, directing her greetings only to the other family members and pointedly ignoring Nathan's presence. Grandmother Rose wasted no time getting started. Linda, we're here because some very serious concerns have been raised about how Hazel has been treated by this family, particularly regarding Brooke's wedding. Before we begin, I want everyone to understand that this is not a discussion or debate. This is an intervention. Mom's face immediately hardened into the expression I remembered from childhood, the one that meant she was preparing for battle. I don't know what Hazel has told you, but I think we all know she has a tendency to exaggerate and dramatize situations. Linda, Grandmother Rose said sharply, you will not dismiss or gaslight anyone in this room. We have documentation of everything we're going to discuss. Nathan opened his laptop and projected a timeline onto Grandmother Rose's living room wall, showing the pattern of lies Mom had told different family members over the past year and a half. Each lie was listed with the date it was told, the person who heard it, and the evidence proving it was false. The room fell silent as everyone read the timeline. Uncle Charles was the first to speak, his voice tight with anger. Linda, please tell me this isn't accurate. Of course it's not accurate, Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. Hazel is clearly having some kind of breakdown and has convinced you all that I'm the villain. This is exactly the kind of delusional thinking I've been worried about. That's when I stood up, my hands shaking but my voice steady. Mom, I want you to explain something to me. You told Mrs. Chen that I had food poisoning and couldn't attend the wedding. You told Jake that I was in therapy for anger management issues. You told Pastor Williams that I was planning to disrupt the ceremony. You told Grandmother Rose that I had asked for space from the family. You told Brooke that I sent a text saying I couldn't handle attending. Which story is true? Mom's eyes darted around the room, looking for support that wasn't coming. I was protecting the family from your erratic behavior. Each situation required different explanations to keep the peace. What erratic behavior? Nathan asked quietly. Can you give us specific examples of things Hazel has done that required this level of intervention? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Mom opened her mouth several times but no words came out. Finally, she fell back on generalities. She's always been dramatic. She takes things too personally. She makes mountains out of molehills. That's not a specific behavior, Uncle Charles pointed out. That's character assassination. Tyler, who had been silent throughout the entire presentation, suddenly spoke up. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Did Hazel really send a text saying she couldn't handle coming to the wedding? Mom's pause was answer enough, but Tyler pressed forward. Because I was there when you read that text out loud to us. But looking back, I never actually saw your phone. You just recited what you said the text said. I don't have to justify my actions to any of you, Mom said, her voice rising with defensive anger. I am Hazel's mother, and I know what's best for this family. If that means making difficult decisions to protect Brooke's special day, then that's what I'll do. Aunt Beverly, who had been quiet throughout most of the meeting, finally found her voice. Linda, I need to tell everyone something. 6 months ago, you asked me not to include Hazel in girls' night events because you said she was going through a rough patch and social situations were triggering for her. I went along with it because I trusted your judgment as her mother. But I always felt terrible about excluding her. The admission opened floodgates. Uncle Charles revealed that Mom had asked him not to invite me to his retirement party because I was too stressed with work to enjoy social gatherings. Tyler admitted that Mom had convinced him not to share details about family events with me because it would pressure me to attend things I couldn't handle. Each family member had been given a slightly different story, each designed to make them complicit in my exclusion while feeling like they were being considerate of my supposed struggles. Dad, who had been sitting with his head in his hands throughout most of the revelations, finally looked up. Linda, what have you done? This isn't protecting the family. This is destroying it. Don't you dare turn this around on me, Mom snapped at him. You know how Hazel gets. You've seen how she questions everything, how she makes everyone uncomfortable with her opinions and her judgments. Her opinions like what? Grandmother Rose demanded. Give us examples. Like when she criticized our Christmas traditions for not being inclusive enough, Mom said triumphantly, as if she had finally found solid ground. I stared at her in shock. I asked if we should consider Derek's family's dietary restrictions when planning Christmas dinner. I wanted to make sure they felt welcome. Or when she questioned whether Brooke was making the right choice with Derek, Mom continued. I asked if Derek understood how important family dinners were to Brooke because she seemed stressed about his work schedule, I replied. For every example Mom gave of my supposed difficult behavior, I was able to provide the context that showed I had been trying to be thoughtful and inclusive. But what became clear was that Mom had been taking normal family discussions and reframing them as evidence of my problematic attitude. Nathan pulled out his phone and showed a recording he had made during our conversation with Pastor Williams. When Pastor Williams' voice filled the room describing Mom's claims that I was planning to expose Derek's family secrets at the wedding, the reaction was immediate and devastating. Linda, Uncle Charles said, his voice barely controlled, that is not just exclusion. That is character assassination. You told our pastor that Hazel was planning to sabotage her own sister's wedding ceremony. I was protecting Brooke, Mom insisted, but her voice was getting smaller. From what? Tyler demanded. From Hazel wanting to help with wedding planning? From her bringing a thoughtful gift? From her caring about our family? That's when Grandmother Rose delivered the final blow. Linda, show me the letters you've been intercepting. What letters? Mom said, but the color drained from her face. The letters I've been sending to Hazel's old address. The ones you've been collecting and hiding to maintain the fiction that she doesn't care about family relationships. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice hollow with realization. You've been intercepting mail? Linda, that's a federal crime. I was protecting the family, Mom said one final time, but the words sounded weak and desperate even to her. Uncle Charles stood up, his face flushed with anger. Linda, I want you to understand something very clearly. What you've done to Hazel isn't protection. It's abuse. You have systematically isolated her from her own family through lies, manipulation, and illegal interception of her mail. You have damaged relationships, caused immense emotional pain, and potentially committed federal crimes. If you don't get help, Grandmother Rose added quietly, if you don't acknowledge what you've done and take steps to fix it, you're going to lose this entire family. Not just Hazel. All of us. Mom looked around the room one last time, searching for support that wasn't coming. What she saw were the faces of family members who finally understood the scope of her deception and were horrified by it. Without another word, she gathered her purse and walked out of Grandmother Rose's house, slamming the door behind her. The family that remained sat in stunned silence, processing what felt like the end of one family dynamic and the beginning of something entirely new. The aftermath of the confrontation at Grandmother Rose's house was swift and painful. Within hours of Mom's dramatic exit, text messages and phone calls started flying between family members. Some were expressions of support for me, others were angry demands for explanations, and a few were attempts to minimize what had been revealed and restore peace at any cost. Dad called me that same evening, his voice shaky and tired. Hazel, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. I knew something wasn't right with how your mother was talking about you, but I chose to believe her because it was easier than confronting the truth. I failed you as a father. His admission was both validating and heartbreaking. Dad, why didn't you say something? When you saw how excluded I was becoming, why didn't you speak up? Because your mother has a way of making you question your own perceptions, he said quietly. She'd have explanations for everything, and they always sounded reasonable in the moment. She'd say you were going through a difficult phase, or you needed space, or including you in something would make your problems worse. And I convinced myself that she knew best because she seemed so certain. Dad revealed that he had started to suspect something was seriously wrong about 6 months earlier when Mom insisted on handling all communication with extended family members about my absence from events. She wouldn't let me call you directly to invite you to things. She said it would undermine her efforts to help you work through your issues. But the more isolated you became, the more normal you seemed when I did see you. He also admitted that Mom had been monitoring his interactions with me, discouraging him from spending time with me one-on-one and making him feel guilty for not supporting her difficult decisions regarding my mental health. The next call came from Tyler, who sounded angrier than I had ever heard him. "Hazel, I need you to know that I'm ashamed of myself. I watched Mom exclude you from everything, and I went along with it because she made it sound like we were helping you." Tyler revealed details that made the scope of Mom's manipulation even clearer. She had been reading text messages between Tyler and me, using his phone when he wasn't paying attention to check for any conversations that might undermine her narrative about my mental state. "Remember when you texted me about wanting to plan something special for Dad's birthday?" Tyler asked. "I never responded because Mom saw the message and convinced me that party planning would be too stressful for you right now. She said I should just tell you we had everything handled." He had dozens of similar examples. Times when I had reached out to him only to have Mom intercept or discourage his responses. Times when he had wanted to include me in plans but was convinced that doing so would be harmful to my supposed recovery process. "The worst part," Tyler said, "is that I started to believe maybe I didn't know you as well as I thought I did. Mom was so convincing when she talked about your struggles. She'd show me articles about mental health and family dynamics, explaining how sometimes the kindest thing you can do is give someone space to heal. But not all family members were ready to accept the truth about Mom's behavior. When I called my cousin Emma in Portland to explain what had been revealed at the family meeting, her response was defensive and uncomfortable. "I don't know, Hazel," she said after I walked through the timeline of lies and intercepted communications. "Your mom has always been so involved and caring with everyone. It's hard to believe she would do all this on purpose. Maybe there were just some miscommunications?" Emma's reluctance to accept the evidence was frustrating but not entirely surprising. Mom had been cultivating relationships with extended family members for years, presenting herself as the devoted mother managing a difficult family situation. Asking people to believe she had been systematically lying required them to question their fundamental understanding of who she was. The family split became more pronounced when Brooke finally returned from her honeymoon and learned about the family meeting she had missed. According to Tyler, who talked to her first, her initial reaction was complete denial. "She said there was no way Mom would make up stories about you having mental health problems," Tyler told me. "She insisted that you really had been acting differently lately and that Mom was just trying to manage a difficult situation." But when Grandmother Rose shared the recordings of our conversations with Pastor Williams and Mrs. Chen, Brooke's certainty began to crack. The specific lies Mom had told, especially about me planning to disrupt the wedding ceremony, were too elaborate and too cruel to explain away as miscommunications. Brooke called me 3 days after returning from her honeymoon, and the conversation was painful for both of us. "Hazel, I need to ask you directly. Have you been struggling with mental health issues that you haven't told me about?" "No," I said simply. "I've been struggling with being excluded from my own family, but that's not the same thing." "But you seemed so distant lately. You weren't participating in wedding planning, you didn't seem excited about my engagement, you never asked about details." "Because every time I tried to participate, I was told you had everything handled. Every time I asked about details, I was made to feel like I was being intrusive. Every time I offered to help, I was shut down." As we talked, Brooke began to remember interactions differently. She recalled times when she had wanted to call me to talk about wedding planning but Mom had suggested she was too busy. Times when she had noticed I seemed hurt or confused by something but Mom had explained it away as me being overwhelmed or going through something. "God, Hazel," Brooke said finally, "what if Mom has been doing this for years and we just never noticed?" That question opened up a painful examination of our family history. How many times had Mom mediated disputes between Brooke and me in ways that made us both feel misunderstood by the other? How many times had she relayed messages or emotions that weren't entirely accurate? How many opportunities for sisterly closeness had been undermined by Mom's need to control family relationships? Uncle Charles emerged as one of my strongest supporters, but his advocacy created tension in his own marriage. Aunt Beverly, while acknowledging that Mom's behavior was wrong, worried about the family-wide confrontation that was brewing. Charles wants to cut Linda off completely until she gets professional help, Beverly confided to Grandmother Rose, who shared the conversation with me. But I'm worried about what this will do to Robert and the kids. Maybe we should try to handle this more quietly. The suggestion that we should minimize Mom's behavior to preserve family peace was exactly the kind of thinking that had allowed the situation to get so bad in the first place. Uncle Charles refused to participate in any family gathering where Mom was present unless she first acknowledged her behavior and committed to getting help. I won't sit at a table and pretend this didn't happen, he told the family. I won't smile and make small talk with someone who spent over a year systematically abusing my niece. The divisions were becoming clear. Grandmother Rose, Uncle Charles, Tyler, and Dad were firmly in my corner, demanding accountability and change. Aunt Beverly, some of the extended family members, and initially Brooke were more focused on preserving family unity and moving past the conflict. Mom, meanwhile, was doubling down on her position. According to Dad, she had started calling family members individually, presenting herself as the victim of a coordinated attack led by Grandmother Rose and me. She claimed that we were using therapy language to make normal family management decisions sound abusive. She's telling people that you've convinced Rose to fund therapy for you, and the therapist has filled your head with ideas about family dysfunction, Dad reported after one particularly painful conversation with Mom. She's saying this is all a vendetta because you weren't the center of attention at Brooke's wedding. The final straw came when Grandmother Rose discovered that Mom had been calling Brooke's new mother-in-law, Derek's mom, to warn her about potential family drama caused by my unstable behavior. Linda told Derek's mother that you might try to cause problems at family gatherings because you're jealous of Brooke's marriage, Grandmother Rose informed me, her voice tight with fury. She's trying to poison Brooke's in-laws against you before they even get to know you. That's when Uncle Charles made the ultimatum that split the family completely. He called a conference call with all the adult family members and delivered an ultimatum. Linda needs to choose between getting professional help for her controlling and manipulative behavior, or losing contact with this family. We will not continue to enable abuse by pretending it's normal family dysfunction. The battle lines were drawn. Those who believed Mom needed help and that her behavior constituted abuse lined up on one side. Those who believed the situation was being blown out of proportion and that family harmony should be the priority lined up on the other. Mom chose to interpret the ultimatum as proof that she was the real victim in the situation. According to the family members who were still in contact with her, she began planning her own family events, deliberately scheduling them to conflict with gatherings that included me. The family that had once functioned as a unit, however dysfunctionally, was now operating as two separate entities that shared DNA but little else. 3 months after the confrontation at Grandmother Rose's house, the new family dynamic had settled into an uncomfortable but honest rhythm. Some relationships were stronger than they had ever been, while others seemed irreparably broken. Dad had moved into Grandmother Rose's guest bedroom, claiming he needed time to think about his marriage. In reality, he was learning to see Mom's controlling behavior in every aspect of their relationship, and the recognition was both liberating and devastating. I realize now that I haven't made a significant family decision without Linda's approval in about 15 years, he told me during one of our weekly father-daughter dinners, a tradition we had established after years of Mom discouraging one-on-one time between us. She convinced me that I was bad at reading family situations and that she had better instincts for managing relationships. Dad was in therapy, working through what his counselor had identified as years of emotional manipulation. He was also seeing a lawyer about separation, though he hadn't made any final decisions about divorce. Tyler had become one of my closest allies, calling me almost daily to share memories he was re-examining through the lens of Mom's manipulation. "Remember when you and Brooke had that big fight in high school about the car?" he asked during one call. "I always thought you were being unreasonable, but now I'm wondering if Mom was stirring things up between you two." We had spent hours reconstructing family events, trying to separate genuine conflicts from situations that Mom had escalated or manufactured. The pattern was consistent. Whenever Brooke and I were getting closer, some crisis would emerge that put us at odds with each other, with Mom positioned as the wise mediator trying to keep the peace. Tyler's girlfriend Ashley had become an unexpected ally as well. As an outsider to our family, she had noticed Mom's behavior from the beginning but had assumed it was normal family dynamics. "I always thought it was weird how your mom would tell me things about you that didn't match my experience of you," she told me. "She'd warn me that you were sensitive about certain topics, but every time I talked to you directly, you seemed totally reasonable." Ashley had her own collection of stories about Mom's manipulation, including times when Mom had discouraged her from developing a closer relationship with me, claiming I was going through something and needed space from new people in the family. Brooke's journey toward accepting the truth had been the most painful to watch. Her marriage was strong, but the revelation that our relationship had been sabotaged for years was devastating. She was also in therapy, working through guilt about the wedding exclusion and trying to rebuild our sisterly bond. "I keep thinking about all the times I could have reached out to you directly instead of going through Mom," she said during a long conversation we had at her new apartment. But she had trained me to think that direct communication would make family problems worse. Brooke had also discovered that Mom had been reading her text messages and emails for years, using access to her phone and computer to monitor her relationships and intervene when necessary. The invasion of privacy had been so gradual and was so often presented as maternal concern that Brooke hadn't recognized it as abnormal control. "She always had explanations for why she needed to check my phone," Brooke explained. "Tech help, or making sure I hadn't forgotten to respond to someone important." But she was actually monitoring my communication and using the information to manage my relationships. The most shocking revelation came when Brooke found years of draft messages in her email account that she had never written. Mom had been composing responses to family members on Brooke's behalf, making her sound less interested in maintaining relationships with extended family than she actually was. Grandmother Rose had become the unofficial head of our reconstructed family, hosting weekly dinners for those who were committed to honest communication and direct relationships. These gatherings included Dad, Tyler, Ashley, Nathan, me, Uncle Charles, Aunt Beverly, who had eventually come around, and Brooke when her work schedule allowed. The dinners were different from the family gatherings of my childhood. People talked directly to each other instead of communicating through Mom as an interpreter. Conflicts were addressed immediately instead of being stored up and managed later. Everyone was encouraged to express their actual opinions instead of saying what they thought would keep the peace. "This is what family dinners are supposed to feel like," Nathan observed after his first few weeks of attending. "People actually seem to like each other." But the new family structure came at a cost. Mom had convinced several extended family members that she was the victim of a coordinated attack, and some relationships remained strained. My cousin Emma continued to believe that the situation had been blown out of proportion. A few family friends had sided with Mom, accepting her version of events that painted me as unstable and vindictive. Most painfully, Mom had made no moves toward getting help or acknowledging her behavior. According to Dad, she had convinced herself that she had been protecting the family from my problems and that our confrontation was proof of her original concerns about my mental state. "She's telling people that the family meeting was evidence of your manipulation," Dad reported sadly. "She says you turned everyone against her by playing the victim and exaggerating normal family management." Mom had started her own holiday celebrations, inviting only the family members who were willing to participate without questioning her version of events. These parallel family functions created awkward choices for relatives who wanted to maintain relationships with everyone. But despite the losses and complications, I was experiencing a kind of freedom I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since childhood, I could be myself in family settings without worrying about how my words would be interpreted or twisted. I could have direct relationships with family members without Mom filtering the communication. Nathan and I had gotten engaged, and planning our wedding became an opportunity to demonstrate what inclusive family celebration looked like. Instead of secret meetings and exclusionary decisions, we invited everyone to contribute ideas. Instead of one person controlling the guest list and narrative, we encouraged each family member to bring the people who mattered to them. "I want our wedding to be everything Brooks wasn't," I told Nathan. "Open, honest, genuinely celebratory." We sent an invitation to Mom, along with a letter explaining that we hoped our wedding could be an opportunity for healing and new beginnings. We asked only that she commit to treating all family members with respect and avoid creating drama or conflict during the celebration. Her response came through Dad: she wouldn't attend a wedding that was designed to humiliate her and celebrate the destruction of our family. The rejection hurt, but it also clarified something important. Mom wasn't interested in repairing relationships or changing her behavior. She was committed to being the victim in a story where her controlling, manipulative actions were reframed as loving protection. 6 months after the confrontation, I realized that losing Mom's approval and presence in my life had been painful but not devastating. The relationships I had built with honest communication and mutual respect were stronger and more fulfilling than the managed, controlled connections I had previously accepted as normal family bonds. "I spent so many years trying to figure out what was wrong with me," I told Nathan one evening as we planned seating charts for our wedding. "But there was never anything wrong with me. I was just living in a family system designed to make me feel crazy." 1 year after that devastating text about Brooke's wedding, I was sitting in the same Denver apartment, but everything had changed. The space that had once felt like a refuge from family drama had transformed into the headquarters for planning my own wedding celebration, one that would honor authentic relationships and genuine love. The coffee table that had held my tears and confusion was now covered with wedding planning materials, but these looked nothing like the secretive, exclusive planning that had characterized Brooke's wedding. Instead of hidden group chats and mysterious meetings, our planning process was completely transparent. We had created a shared online folder where every family member could see vendor contacts, timeline updates, and budget decisions. We held monthly planning meetings that anyone could attend, and we genuinely welcomed input from everyone who wanted to contribute. Grandmother Rose had appointed herself the unofficial wedding coordinator, a role she embraced with the enthusiasm of someone who had spent decades watching family events be managed through manipulation and control. "This is how it should always have been done," she declared during one planning meeting, surrounded by charts and timelines that she had created with the precision of a military operation. Dad had moved back in with Mom 3 months after their separation, but their relationship looked fundamentally different. He was in individual therapy and had convinced Mom to attend couples counseling, though she approached it with the attitude of someone who was humoring everyone else's overreaction to normal family management. "She's trying," Dad told me during one of our regular coffee dates, "but she still doesn't fully understand why her behavior was problematic. The therapist is helping her see that controlling information and managing other people's relationships isn't actually protecting the family." Progress was slow and sometimes frustrating. Mom had agreed to return Grandmother Rose's intercepted letters and to stop monitoring family members' communication, but she had never fully acknowledged the emotional damage her actions had caused. Her apologies were conditional and focused more on how her good intentions had been misunderstood than on the pain she had inflicted. But even limited progress felt significant after years of complete denial. Mom had agreed to attend our wedding, and she had committed to letting other family members plan events without her oversight. It wasn't full accountability, but it was a beginning. Tyler had emerged from the family crisis as a much stronger and more independent person. He had started setting boundaries with Mom that he had never established before, and he was learning to trust his own perceptions about family dynamics instead of deferring to her interpretations. "I realized that I never made a single family decision without checking with Mom first," he told me. "Even choosing what to bring to potlucks or deciding whether to attend events. I was 25 years old and still asking my mother for permission to live my own life." Tyler's girlfriend Ashley had been incredibly supportive throughout his process of establishing independence, but she had also started pointing out ways that the family's communication patterns affected their relationship. "Tyler would tell me things about family events that didn't match what I experienced when I was there," Ashley explained. "He'd say someone was upset about something, but when I talked to that person directly, they had no idea what he was referring to. We realized he was repeating Linda's interpretations of people's emotions instead of observing their actual behavior. Brooke and I had rebuilt our relationship from the ground up, establishing new patterns of communication that didn't rely on Mom as an interpreter or mediator. We talked directly about conflicts instead of letting them simmer until they exploded. We made plans together without checking with anyone else about whether our choices were acceptable. We learned to trust each other's words instead of assuming hidden meanings or ulterior motives. I keep being surprised by how much I actually like you, Brooke told me with a laugh during one of our sister planning sessions for my wedding. Mom always made it sound like we were fundamentally incompatible, but we actually have a lot in common when we're not competing for her approval. Derek had become an unexpected ally in family healing. As an outsider who had witnessed the wedding drama without being directly involved, he offered perspectives that helped all of us understand how abnormal our previous family dynamics had been. At my family's events, people just talk to whoever they want to talk to, he observed. They don't ask permission or check with anyone about whether conversations are appropriate. When someone has a problem, they address it directly with the person involved. There's no central authority managing everyone's relationships. Derek's family had also been confused by the stories Mom had told about me before the wedding. When they finally met me at family gatherings, they couldn't reconcile the warm, funny person they encountered with the unstable troublemaker they had been warned about. Uncle Charles had become one of my strongest supporters, using his role as the family's unofficial patriarch to establish new norms for family communication. He instituted a policy that family event planning would be done in group settings where everyone could participate, and that no one person would be responsible for relaying information between family members. If you have something to say to someone, say it directly, he announced during a family meeting. If you have concerns about someone's behavior, address it with them personally. We're not going to have any more telephone games or managed conversations. The changes weren't always smooth. Family members who were used to Mom managing their relationships had to learn new skills for direct communication. Some people initially felt lost without her guidance about how to interpret other family members' emotions or motivations. But the benefits were undeniable. Family gatherings became more relaxed and genuine. People stopped walking on eggshells, afraid that their words would be reported back to someone else in a twisted form. Conflicts were resolved more quickly because they weren't allowed to fester and grow through misinterpretation. Nathan had been amazing throughout the entire process, providing stability and perspective when everything felt chaotic. His own family had welcomed me with the kind of uncomplicated warmth that I was learning to recognize as normal, and they provided a model for what healthy family relationships could look like. "Your family is fun," Nathan's mother had told me after our first holiday gathering together. "Everyone seems to genuinely enjoy each other's company." The comment had made me realize how rare that quality had been in my own family gatherings, where undercurrents of tension and managed interactions had made genuine enjoyment difficult. As our wedding day approached, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed since that devastating text about Brooke's wedding. The event that had felt like the ultimate rejection and exclusion had actually become the catalyst for building healthier, more honest relationships with the family members who were willing to do the work. Planning our wedding had given me the opportunity to demonstrate what inclusive celebration looked like. Instead of secret planning sessions, we held open meetings. Instead of excluding family members based on one person's assessment of their character, we invited everyone and trusted them to behave appropriately. Instead of managing guest interactions through careful seating arrangements and controlled conversations, we created an environment where people could connect naturally. The morning of our wedding, I woke up feeling completely different than I had imagined a bride would feel. There was none of the anxiety about family drama that had characterized every family event for years. There were no worries about someone's hurt feelings or excluded relatives or managed conversations. Grandmother Rose arrived early to help me get ready, bringing with her a small wrapped box. "This is something I've been saving for the right granddaughter," she said with tears in her eyes. "Your grandfather gave this to me on our wedding day, and I want you to have it." Inside the box was a delicate gold bracelet with a small charm that read truth and love. She fastened it around my wrist as she told me the story of how my grandfather had commissioned it from a local jeweler, choosing words that represented the foundation he wanted for their marriage. "Your grandfather always said that relationships built on anything other than truth and love were doomed to fail," she explained. "I'm so proud of you for choosing truth, even when it was painful." Mom arrived to help with wedding preparations, looking nervous but genuinely committed to being supportive. She had been working with her therapist on what it meant to participate in family events without trying to control them, and while the effort was sometimes visible, it was also genuine. "You look beautiful," she told me when I emerged from the dressing room in my wedding dress. "I'm sorry I missed so much of your happiness before. I'm grateful to be here for this." It wasn't the full acknowledgement I had once hoped for, but it was progress. And more importantly, it was honest communication that didn't require me to pretend that the past year hadn't happened. The ceremony itself was everything I had dreamed of since childhood. Simple, heartfelt, and completely free of the kind of drama and tension that had characterized family gatherings for years. When Nathan and I exchanged vows, I looked out at the assembled guests and saw faces full of genuine joy and celebration. During the reception, I watched my family members interacting with each other naturally and directly. Tyler was deep in conversation with Derek about shared interests I hadn't known they had. Dad was telling stories to Nathan's parents, making them laugh with an ease that suggested he was finally comfortable being himself in social situations. Brooke was dancing with Uncle Charles, both of them looking relaxed and happy in a way that felt completely authentic. Even Mom seemed to be enjoying herself, talking with other guests without the intense, managing energy that had once characterized her at family events. She wasn't orchestrating conversations or monitoring interactions. She was just participating as one family member among many. The moment that crystallized everything for me came during the father-daughter dance. As Dad and I swayed to music that he had helped me choose, he whispered in my ear, "I'm so proud of the woman you've become, and I'm sorry it took me so long to really see you." "I'm proud of the man you're becoming too, Dad," I whispered back, and I could feel him smile against my cheek. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Nathan and I stood together greeting everyone and receiving their congratulations. When Mom approached us, she hugged me with what felt like genuine warmth. "Thank you for inviting me," she said quietly. "Thank you for giving me the chance to be here for your happiness." "Thank you for coming," I replied. "Thank you for letting this be about Nathan and me." It wasn't a perfect resolution. There were still conversations that needed to happen, boundaries that needed to be maintained, and healing that would take years to complete. But it was an honest interaction based on mutual respect and genuine care, and that felt revolutionary after years of managed, manipulated communication. Later that night, as Nathan and I drove away from our reception toward our honeymoon destination, I reflected on the journey from that devastating text about Brooke's wedding to this celebration of authentic love and honest relationships. "Do you think you'll ever have a completely normal family?" Nathan asked as we drove through the mountains under a sky full of stars. "I don't think any family is completely normal," I said. "But I think we might finally have a family that's completely honest. And that feels like enough." Looking back, I realized that losing Mom's approval and inclusion in her version of family had been devastating but necessary. The relationships I had built through honest communication and mutual respect were stronger and more fulfilling than the managed, controlled connections I had previously accepted as normal. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the truth, even when it's painful. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the people you love is to refuse to participate in systems that diminish their worth. Sometimes healing means choosing love over resentment, but it also means choosing reality over comfortable lies. If my story resonates with you, if you've experienced similar family dynamics, or if you're struggling with difficult relationships, I want you to know that you're not crazy and you're not alone. Trust your perceptions. Value your own experience. And remember that healthy relationships require honesty, respect, and genuine care from all parties involved. Have you ever experienced family manipulation or exclusion like this? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below because your story might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this video helped you feel less alone in your own family struggles, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming difficult relationships. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their family's dysfunction isn't their fault. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve relationships built on truth and love, not control and manipulation. Here's to choosing healing over resentment, and authentic connection over managed relationships.